right, welcome back to Business Today. We are discussing matters to do with investment in water and sanitation, urban development, and climate change. And in studio, we have Mr. Peter Biwott, who is the managing director, Eldoras, that is Eldoret Water and Sanitation Company. And before we took a break, you were touching about funding, which is critical. You're thinking about floating a bond, but just segueing into matters climate change, because I see a lot of interest in climate financing. Matters to do with green bond. We've had one of those by Econ, for example, at the NSC. And there's a likelihood of you getting funding when you are conscious of the state of climate change. Maybe from a water sector perspective, how does it marry with climate change?
Yeah, thank you very much. If you look at many Kenyan urban cities or urban centers, there is an existence of water shortages or acute water shortages. The reason being, if you go to the catchment areas, and this is something that most urban dwellers might not be aware. If you go to many catchment areas, there's a lot of degradation of the environment. So the river regimes are going down, the quality and quantity of water is actually going down, and there is currently a concerted effort under the presidential directive on the 15 billion tree seedlings, just not to focus on only conservation, but to look at what is the impact of that climate action in relation to water supply in urban centers. And you realize that there's an introduction of a concept of water funds, whereby you look at the whole ecosystem from conservation of the catchment areas up to consumption. And that's why this is something that I think even the regulators in the Republic, the regulator in the Republic needs to pay attention to in terms of involving urban dwellers to contribute to climate sustainability or climate action. Because in Eldoret, currently we have a program called Eldoret Retain Water Fund, which is a fund contributed by both private and public sectors. You find that there are companies in the private sector who use water as an input to their production. Mm-hmm. And they are also contributing to the climate action. So even city residents, they need to be put into this context, and how they can be actually involved is if Kenya can look at the issue of tariffs. You look at tariffs. In Kenya, we talk about cost recovery tariff. I think we need to say cost recovery, climate smart tariffs, so that in addition to ensuring that we have tariffs which are cost recovery, we put some percentage for climate action. Currently, we are having donors for the Eldoret Retain Water Fund, but you see, donor money might not be sustainable for the long term.
But wouldn't that make water more expensive?
On average, I can tell you, water is not really expensive, because you see, in Eldoret, for example, we sell 68 shillings for 1,000 liters. In Ruiru, they do an average of 200 shillings for 1,000 liters. But if you go to Ruiru, the customers have not complained about the bill, the amount of money they pay. They also don't complain about service. Now, if in towns where the tariff is lower, like Eldoret, customers will be complaining about service, and also, and during the negotiation of our tariff, no customer actually complained about, increase of the water rates, and that is why we need to think our paradigm shift and know that if we have a tariff that is climate smart, then you increase some amount to cater for climate action. Because after all, if you don't take care of the climate, our cities will run dry because there'll be no water. So there's a higher premium, and that's why you're talking about a green bond. For those companies which are already listed in the Nairobi Securities Exchange. Okay. They will be interested to invest in a green bond because they are looking at the sustainability of their businesses, looking at sustainability in urban centers, which is their client base. Let me tell you, Banano, all of us, we go to supermarkets and we buy 1 liter of water at 100 shillings. Now, imagine you pay 68 shillings for 1,000 liters. You don't complain when you buy 1 liter at 100 shillings. Mm-hmm. Then you want to complain if I say I increase my tariff, let's say from 68, because Nyeri is 121. Say Eldoret, we increase up to 120 or even up to 100. Mm-hmm. You want to complain for 100 for 1,000 liters, but you don't complain for 100 for 1 liter. Okay. So it's exactly a kind of a paradigm shift. Okay. And if we can be able to sensitize our customers to see the value in paying the bill and ensuring that we conserve the climate.
Okay. So one of the ways in terms of, because for the clients, if there is an additional cent to their bill, they ask why, and you're talking about convincing them the value of it. So for the climate fund, apart from the element of tree planting, which I've seen you guys have done an amazing job at, what other avenues are you looking at, even in the tech space, to sort of leverage and make sure that the environment is taken care of, even as we are getting quality services from water companies?
You see, apart from looking at the conservation itself, tree planting and catchment conservation, there are certain technologies which also helps us to preserve or conserve the water. Like as I said earlier, the new technologies in the water pipeline, the piping systems, and then the new technologies in terms of metering, and then in terms of improving management and governance of water companies in Kenya, I look at employment of technologies like drones to be able to monitor the forests, the way they are growing, what you've actually been able to plant, how are they growing, and also to monitor the way water is flowing and the way the rivers are actually increasing in terms of water volumes.
Okay.
So there are a lot of technologies that actually can be adopted in terms of ensuring that we have conservation of water, and at the same time also conservation of our catchment areas.
Definitely. And we're supposed to be finishing this interview just briefly, because now we are seeing that discussion around logging in the country is back. How will that marry into the whole conservation and climate change agenda?
I think what is going to happen in the issue of logging is that I think the president talked about focusing on the old and commercial forests. There are forests which are commercial and already the trees have matured, and they need to be cleared to pave way for new tree planting. Even as a company, we have in our installations about 300,000 trees, which out of which 50% have actually already matured, and they are growing old. And when trees grow older, they lose the value, their economic value, and they become a waste. So I think when we focus on those commercial forests and secure the indigenous forests, or grow the indigenous forests, we should be able to ensure that this target to achieve the 15 billion trees for our country is actually realized.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you very much. Peter Biwott is the managing director of Eldoret Water and Sanitation Company, and he says that watch out, we are coming to the Nairobi Securities Exchange to raise money, a bond, to finance our water project and have that green element and climate change approach to it, climate action approach to it, which is very critical. But that is discussion on what matters: water, sanitation, urban development, and climate change. But moving on